Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and today we're doing another head-to-head video. So lined up for you today, we're doing the Kamado Joe versus the Weber Kettle. All right, before you tell me you can't compare a kettle to a Kamado, there's a few good reasons why I actually think this comparison should exist. One, I often hear of people referring to kettle as going out for their first grill or a starter grill, which is great. I think you should be looking at doing something other than cooking on propane. There's so much more flavor with charcoal cooking. I think that's where we can all get along and say you should be cooking on charcoal. The interesting story about this kettle is it actually belongs to my neighbor, and we had this conversation a couple years ago. Should he get a Kamado? Should he get a starter grill? And he chose to get a kettle. And just this week, I helped him set up his brand new Kamado Joe Classic 3. And so following his progression in cooking to where he realized he needed more than what the kettle could provide, I thought I'd do a quick video sharing his evolution in cooking in terms of 3 things the kettle's great at and 3 things the Kamado Joe is great at. And if maybe that helps one of you pick a grill that gets you away from propane, mission accomplished. We've got a lot to uncover in today's video, so before I forget, please hit that like and subscribe button to catch future videos. Let's get into it. All right, this video isn't actually as crazy as it sounds, and let me explain why. This is a Kettle Master Touch model from Weber, and out the door with some accessories, if you added the slow and sear, a cover to make sure it doesn't rust, a grill gripper, and things that you need to get cooking. The same things that come with a Kamado Joe, where you get a heat deflector for indirect cooking, a grill gripper to lift your grid, an ash tool to pull out the ash. Out the door with those accessories added, this grill in Canadian dollars. I know you're gonna laugh and say, what's that, monopoly money? No, it's what we use, it's our actual currency. But this is $539 when I priced it out this morning. And that Joe Jr. beside me is $499. So price-wise, these two are actually in a far more similar space for someone looking to get that starter grill. So with price out of the way, let's go into a little bit of the difference. There's a lot of them, and find out which of these two you should be looking at for your first charcoal grill. All right, I would like to cover 3 things in this video. First, I'm gonna tell you 3 reasons that you should buy a kettle. I'm going to tell you 3 reasons you should buy a Kamado Joe. Second thing we want to cover is just a quick overview of each grill. How do they work? What makes them unique? How do you set them up and actually use one if that's the grill that you're looking at getting? And third, I'd like to do a little bit of a test to check on the differences in the approach to how each cooker approaches indirect or direct grilling. So those are the 3 things you're in for today. Let's start with the top 3 reasons you should consider buying a Weber kettle. All right, so reason number 1 you should buy a Weber kettle is its portability. This thing is so easy to move around one-handed. Just pick that up, bring it along. Anywhere you want to go, this is much easier to take with you. And so if you're moving your grill around your yard regularly, this is definitely a grill that you want to consider. It's light, it's got the wheels built in, it's just easy to move around. Number 2, if you are moving your grill around often, you want to make sure that you don't damage it in the process. And so while I absolutely love taking my Kamado Joe Jr. with me, one of the highlights of having these grills is the ability to take them places. Without a doubt, you know, this is lighter and I'm not as worried about it breaking. These are not ceramic components, they're metal, and I don't want to be rough with them and bang them and dent them because you can get an air leak and mess up your indirect cooking and airflow on it. But definitely there's some durability there with metal versus ceramics. So those are the first 2 reasons. The third reason you might want to buy a kettle is price. Already mentioned, the review we're going to do today is shockingly closer in price than you might have guessed it was at the beginning of this video, but that's overlooking the point that this is a much larger grid size than what you get on the Joe Jr. And you're more likely, for that much real estate, needing to compare it to something like the Classic or the Big Joe. Weber kettles come in all sorts of different sizes, but for the price, for the money, you definitely get a lot of real estate. So those are the 3 reasons why I think you should consider a kettle. Now let me go to 3 reasons why I think a Kamado Joe is the right grill for you, and perhaps some of the same reasons why my neighbor a few years in is selling this one and setting up one of these. So on to our 3 reasons why you should buy a Kamado Joe. First reason is the versatility. These cookers can do so many things right out of the gate, from low and slow cooks like ribs or brisket, pulled pork, to hot and fast cooks. We do pizza on here at 900 degrees and it comes out amazing. Or when we're searing our steaks, my favorite way to cook a steak is reverse sear. So I like to smoke it with just a little bit of wood. And then once we hit our internal temperature, crank the heat and get the temperature up. And I'm often seeing 900 degrees in a matter of minutes. And that's just not a temperature that these kettles can reach. So in point number 2 on why you should buy a Kamado Joe grill. So I cook year round, and one of the things that I love about a ceramic cooker is how energy efficient it is. It uses so little charcoal and can burn for a long time. It holds heat really well, and if you've seen any of my other videos where I do overnight pork cooks, I set up the Joe, don't even check it overnight, don't need to worry about it. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in how to set up your Kamado Joe for the same hassle-free low and slow operation. But it's so energy efficient that we can do that. We can set it up, go to bed, 12 hours later, 18 hours later, 24 hours later, I still have charcoal left in the basket depending on the temperature that I'm cooking in. And in winter, in particular, using a lot less coal. You cannot keep a kettle fueled without adding charcoal for that long. On to point number 3. So our third and final reason, or third out of the 3 I'm picking today, there are many more, but the third reason that I wanted to highlight why you should pick a Kamado Joe is the moisture retention. And so one of the things that just makes cooking on these style of grills so rewarding is how much moisture they retain. And the difference with, a gas grill and a Kamado Joe or ceramic cooker or even a kettle like the Weber here in front of me is the difference in how much moisture gets retained. So when you're cooking with propane, you have not an airtight grill. So you have lots of heat in that grill, and that heat is racing towards the cool air, and it's depriving and taking your meat's moisture with it. So that's most noticeable when you cook things like chicken. And if you ever had barbecue chicken and thought this is dry, I promise it doesn't have to be that way. You can have such a thing as good, juicy chicken, and it's fully cooked. So moisture retention is a big advantage for ceramic cookers, and that is also going to be an advantage when comparing it to a kettle, is this is not airtight. There's still lots of places where air is getting in and out. I still prefer charcoal any day over propane, but for meats that dry out easily, like a brisket or chicken or turkey, you haven't tasted them until you've tried them off of a Kamado Joe. So those are the 3 reasons that I think if you're looking for a grill out of the get-go, you should consider either a kettle or a Kamado Joe. Now, let me show you a quick overview of each one if they're new to you both, on how they work, how you set them up, and then we'll get into our test. Okay, so things start off pretty similar. We have a bottom draft door, which is where our air comes in, and we have a top vent where our air comes out. I like to think of these as a gas pedal and a brake pedal. So the gas pedal, you want to go faster, you want to cook hotter, you need more air, and I would adjust that on the bottom. You want to slow things down and start holding a steady temperature, that's your brake pedal, to the point where you could maybe even stop the car, and that's completely closing your top vent. In this regard, the kettle and the Kamado Joe function very much the same way. 2 different ways of how they set that up, and I'll show you inside each so you can see what that looks like. But getting started, we have our adjustment dial down here that will open and close for more or less airflow, and I'll do that when you can actually see what that does. And then we've got our top vent. Now, in terms of difference in style, this is the upgraded Weber model, which comes with this nice rubber, which is great because these things get really hot. And if you're doing a chicken or something like that where you're 300-400 degrees, you're going to need some high heat gloves in order to be able to touch this. This still gets quite hot even with the rubber, but at least makes it more manageable. The other thing you'll notice here is just the difference in design. So this gets gummed up quite easily and it gets a little bit sticky, but with some degreaser and regular use, it's not a problem. You can keep on moving that. Alright, let me show you how the fire controls on the Kamado Joe work if you haven't seen them before. So very similar to what I just covered, you've got a draft door on the bottom, which is your air, and we've got our analogy here of the brake pedal on the top. We want no brakes, that's wide open, and that's max airflow, to some temperature control here with the daisy wheel. If you have one of the newer Series 3 grills, they no longer come with a daisy wheel cap. They come with a control tower cap, which works very similarly to moving left or right for more or less air, and it can open up all the way for max airflow and really get that fire going. So now that we know how to control the air on both cookers, let's take a look inside and just look for any differences between the two. Okay, so let's take a look inside. Unlike the Kamado Joe, which has a hinge that stays attached, the dome is completely removable on the kettle. And on the Master Touch model, you get that hanger on the back, which gives you a place to store that hot dome. So inside, as you can see, we have our main cooking grid, our raised cooking grid, and underneath all of those, our charcoal grid, which is what we would pour our charcoal on. And we've got a couple options for doing that. One, we could just dump some charcoal in there and get cooking. Two, we've got two little charcoal baskets that we can arrange a couple of different ways. We can put them together and have a center fire with some indirect area around the outside and go for a bit of a vortex, or we can actually push those to each side and light them independently and have an indirect area in the middle. And I'm hoping the camera is picking this up, but you can see the air controls, and we have this rotating fan type mechanism, would probably be the best way to describe it if you haven't seen it, but they slide around and they adjust how much airflow we get in the grill. So let me show you what that looks like. By moving those, you can see we either have them all the way closed, all the way open. So for lighting it, I'm going to leave it open and we'll get ready to do our test. But in a second, or before I do that, pardon me, let me show you inside the Joe Jr. All right, let's take a look inside the Kamado Joe Jr. So naturally on top, we have our cooking grate, which like the Weber, has one of these hinge lift assemblies. If we were cooking direct and we wanted to throw on some smoking wood, we could do that easily. Let's go ahead and pull this off. This is really, right here, this next layer, the biggest difference between the two cookers is that you are getting a true indirect cooking area. Albeit the cooking area on the Weber is much, much larger, but this is absolutely big enough to do a spatchcock chicken, plenty of steaks. It's really only if you got into a whole bunch of burgers and dogs that this isn't going to have the real estate that you need, and you'd want either the Joe Classic or Big Joe in order to compete with the real estate that you get on a kettle. But I just love this setup for getting great indirect convection cooking. If you haven't seen it before, heat divider in place. Let me slide that out. I'm trying to juggle things without dropping it. And this is the rack system that just sits on these notches, just like that. Hoping that you can see that, as I can't see the camera. And at the bottom is our charcoal basket. And now this is not included on the Joe Jr. It is included on the newer Series 3 grills, and I fell in love with it there, so I had to go and find one myself for the Joe Jr. And a company called Kick-Ash Basket makes this one. Ordered it online, got it within a week or so, and I absolutely love having it for the Joe Jr. as well. And the reason I like that is when you're done your cook, you just shake out your ash, all your discarded ash falls to the bottom. It's really easy to clean it out. You put this back in and you are in business. The other reason I really like this for the Joe Jr. is this is a grill I like to take with me places. And one of the advantages that I cited earlier is that ceramic keeps its heat really well. One of the disadvantages when you're out for the day and you want to throw this back in your vehicle is that ceramic keeps its heat really well and it doesn't want to cool off. So to get it to cool off much more quickly, when we're done a cook, using metal hooks, we just take the charcoal basket out and douse that with some water, and then we can leave this wide open and it cools off much quicker, and it just makes it that much more usable for taking camping or a picnic or to the beach or something like that. So enough about the inside of each grills. Let's get on to our test. All right, welcome to our test segment where we get to put these two grills head to head. If you've seen any of my other head-to-head videos before, like where I compared the Kamado Joe Classic to the large Big Green Egg, or the Kamado Joe Jr. to my Mini Max Big Green Egg, I'll put a link to the description if you haven't had a chance to check them out. But in short, what we did is we used a really simple test just to illustrate the difference in how each setup works from an indirect performance. And I used a piece of bread, something simple, to show the practical differences in how that manifests itself out during an indirect cook. Well, I wasn't going to do that again today because we've already done it. I was going to do a spatchcock chicken on each bird, but as this is a beautiful Saturday, mid self-isolation in the COVID crisis, groceries are hard to come by, as is fresh chicken. And so I wasn't able to source either of these things safely for this video, so we're sticking with toast. And what I'm going to do is put a piece of toast in the middle and just show the differences in indirect and indirect. And why I wish that I could have shown you the chicken video is this would have really illustrated the advantage of ceramic, where it holds that heat and you cook your bird not just from the bottom but also from the top down, and it crisps up that skin almost as if it had been deep fried. So if you've been following me on Instagram at Smokin' Dad BBQ, you've maybe seen some pictures there that just look delicious. They taste even better than they look. You just have to take my word for it on the taste. So today we're going to do a visual representation of how these two grills tackle indirect cooking. So that's what we got in store for you. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you'd like to see a different type of comparison between these grills, other grills, or if you have some questions. I'm always looking through my comments and try and answer those questions. So let me know what's on your mind while I get to work firing these up. Are you fired up? I'm fired up. Let's do it. All right, let me show you what we got going on over here. I've set up the kettle the most popular way for indirect cooking by using the side-to-side charcoal dividers. So we've got our two little dividers going. And then the Joe Jr., we've lit our fire, and we will go ahead and add our indirect heat diffuser in a moment once a few of those coals are lit. So let me take the camera back to the tripod and we'll give these grills a chance to come up to temperature. The temperature we're going to simulate today is 400 degrees, which I would do for the spatchcock chicken, the virtual chickens that we wanted to cook for today. That would be the temp that I would go to, 400, 425. So let's give these a moment to come up to temp. All right, so if you saw my other review videos, you know we're gonna hit these up with some bread. We did a baguette test on the large Big Green Egg versus the Kamado Joe. We did toast on the Mini Max and the Joe Jr. to illustrate the difference that extra height makes between the diffuser and your cooking grid. Today, we're going with a bagel, because that's what I had. So let's get these on the grill. We're gonna give it about 5 minutes. I'm gonna put it face down, and we'll just see what it looks like for toast. So the kettle is set up for indirect, as indirect as we can get it from the factory, which is our fire on each side with an indirect area in the middle. And so I think that should be pretty good because there's not direct heat coming up, it's coming up and around. Whereas our Joe Jr. has the heat coming up, hitting that deflector plate and coming up and around. So I think that's about as fair as we can make it. Let's find out how the different indirect setups work. Alright, so quick update. I mentioned I was just going to bring you closer, show you the temperatures. I went inside to grab a coat, and next thing you know, the skies opened up for a bit. So I went inside, took shelter, came back out now that the rain has stopped. It's only about 20-30 minutes, but I want to pass this on for an important reason. When I came back out, our kettle was no longer 400 degrees. It was down to 350. I opened it up, and we burned through nearly all of our charcoal that I used to get up to temperature in the first place. So we're waiting and holding to get back up to temperature. I've added the rest of the charcoal that I had in the bag to try and get back up there. Our Joe Jr. has overshot a little bit, so I'm just actually slowing that down. It's about 425, 450, and there is, I checked, still lots of coal in there. So 2 different size cookers. It's not an exact comparison, but just again, that ceramic efficiency really showing through there. Whereas even just getting close to this, right about there, like a fireplace, you feel that radiant heat escaping after the rainstorm to get lit and come up to temperature again, and then we'll be ready to do our bagel test. So I'll see you in a second, and when I can show you, both are at 400. Okay, we have finally got both our grills back to the exact same temperature at 400 degrees where we started. Let me bring you a little closer. Okay, so our Kamado Joe Jr. sitting right at about 400, and our kettle looks almost at 400. So I think that is as fair as we're going to get. Let's do it. Okay, it's only been a couple minutes, and I don't know if you can hear or see, but the rain has returned. So it might cut our test a little bit short. But if my nose is any indication, one of these two is already toasting, toasting. That's the official word for this test, right? We're gonna find out if one of these is already ahead of the other. So I think we put on the kettle first. Let's check that out. Looks pretty good from the top. Oh, that's what I smelled. That's a little bit, that's well done. Let's find out our Junior. See some, ooh, hot. Yeah, okay. Let me get another set of gloves so I can hold both of those, and we'll do our conclusions. All right, I got gloves on now that we can handle this. And as you can tell, just night and day difference between the 2 indirect setups. What we wanted to see is the difference in indirect cooking in terms of what does that mean? What does that, how's the bottom of your chicken gonna look indirect at a high temperature versus when you have some heat detection? So before I get completely soaked, again, results just night and day difference. Sorry for the weather not cooperating and that we couldn't do everything that we wanted to do. Hope you enjoyed today's comparison. If there's another comparison that you'd like to see me do, let me know in the comments below. But I'm gonna go ahead and call this one before I'm wet head to toe. Night and day difference. The winner in this one, round, Kamado Joe. No doubts about it. See you guys next time, and if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'm James from Smokin' Dad BBQ. We'll see you then.